Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Very warm welcome to this afternoon's Marjon live session. This is a course talk on history, and my name is Siobhan and I'm going to be the producer for the session today. So for those of you who've not used Microsoft Teams Live before, just a couple of things to be aware of. We actually can't see or hear you today, so that doesn't mean that we don't want you to kind of interact with us and ask questions and that type of thing. We're really keen for you to get involved and to get engaged, and obviously we'll do our best to kind of cater the session to your questions. So we definitely want you to do that. You can ask your questions in the live Q&A, which is the two speech bubbles, which you'll see on the side of your screen, one of which has got a question mark on it. So you can write your questions in there and then we will publish them for you, and then we'll hopefully answer those questions for you as well. If you are putting your questions in there, just bear in mind that they will be published, so you're welcome to make them anonymously or to pop your first name in there as, if you'd like to as well. If you would prefer the question to be private, that's absolutely fine. Then just pop private at the start of your message, and then we won't publish that one for you. So I'm joined today by Georgina and Ryan, and they're two student ambassadors, so two students at Marjon, and also Miles, who is the programme lead for history. So I'm just going to hand over to Georgina and Ryan first to introduce themselves and say hello. So Georgina, over to you.
Hiya, I'm Georgina and I'm in my second year doing psychology.
That's great, thanks Georgina. And Ryan?
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm a third year and I'm doing acting.
Well, thanks Ryan. Okay, so I'll be manning the Q&A this afternoon, so you might hear my voice kind of jumping in at various points, and I'm now going to hand over to Miles, who is the programme lead for history. Thank you, Miles.
Thank you, thanks Siobhan, and welcome to this history live talk. Hopefully this will give you as much of the information as you need in order to help make a decision about your future and what your aspirations are with regards to your academic study. There's a lot to say in the next sort of 45 minutes or so to an hour, and I'm going to try and kind of work at some pace. However, I don't want you to just hear me, so I'm going to refer to and also defer to Ryan and Georgina at points in time, because they'll be able to give you more of an insider's perspective as they're current students with us. Yeah, in a moment I'll just kind of outline what I'm going to use the session to do and how that's going to work. As Siobhan's indicated, if at any point you've got any questions, then please put those into the chat. Towards the end of the meeting today, I will try to answer some of those questions if there are some there. But equally, my contact information will be visible to you at a couple of points, so please make a note of that. And if you've got any questions at any point in time, feel free to contact me via my email address, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay. Georgina, could we just skip to that first slide, please, if that's okay? Thanks. Second, I guess. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing in this session is just sharing with you, first of all, some thoughts about why you might want to study history. I'm a very passionate sort of historian myself in a way, and I'd like to be able to share some of my enthusiasm with you for the subject, but also consider just briefly what may lead you down this particular route of taking history as a degree. So I'd like to share some thoughts with you around that. I'm going to talk about the history programme at Marjon. You'll see there that it's new for 2021. So actually the history programme doesn't currently exist. It's still in its stages of becoming a programme. It's past many of the first kind of stages and steps of that process, and will be a programme in September 2021. So very excited about the introduction of this new programme here at Marjon, and a number of colleagues and myself have been working really hard to make sure that this is a really energetic and exciting programme for you. So I'm going to talk about what that programme looks like. I'm going to talk about what makes history totally unique and distinctive at Marjon compared to elsewhere that you might be looking. It's really important that you get the right sort of fit for yourself. Hopefully Marjon would be that, but obviously you need to weigh things up very carefully. I'd like to run through the modules and how those are currently or indicatively looking at the moment, they are still subject to change because the programme is still in the works, as I say, but these are looking like they are pretty much certain. So I'll talk through those in some detail. I'll give you an example module as well, so you can kind of, you know, chew the fat on that one a little bit with somebody at home perhaps, and then yeah, and that will probably bring things to a close with the additional point of having some Q&A at the end as well. So before we go to the next slide, I thought it would be interesting just to get Ryan and Georgina to chip in with something. So the next slide, I'm just going to explain some thoughts that I have around why you might want to study history. But Georgina and Ryan, perhaps you could just start us off with why somebody might want to study at Marjon at all. What is it about Marjon that both drew you to Marjon and kind of kept you with us for 3 years? Ryan, you finished now, and Georgina, you've just come to the end of your second year. So what is it about Marjon that you like and value? And Ryan, as you're kind of at the end of the road, so to speak, or at the junction, and you're set on that new path soon, I'm sure. Do you want to start us off? So what is it about Marjon that kind of, you know, stands out and makes the experience valuable for you?
For me, it was the class sizes. Straight away when I just came to the open day, I got such a nice sort of vibe from everyone. And it's still true that I'm here now, that there is this very big community vibe, and sort of everyone does know everyone, and that's staff and students alike all speak to each other. And I didn't feel that I felt that in parts of other unis, but nowhere near as strong and sort of cohesive as it feels at Marjon for me.
Yeah. Great, thanks very much. That sense of community, I think, is something that we pride ourselves on. We're a small university, small numbers on courses, and that means that inevitably, to some extent, we get to know our students and one another very well, and I think that fosters a great sort of spirit of learning. Georgina, what is it for you?
I'd probably say class sizes as well, but more that I get a lot of one-on-one time with my lecturer. So if I need help with anything, help with assessments, I can literally just drop them an email or talk to them in class, and they'll have time for me. But going with that, it's also how the layout of the psychology rooms are, because they're not standard teaching rooms, a lot of them. So it is a lot more of a comfortable space where I can just talk to my lecturer and get more help.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much. We have an established system at the university for students to meet with their academic tutors, who also act in a pastoral sense to support throughout the year and the duration of the programme. So there are lots of structures and systems in place to support in terms of as you transition into the university and then throughout your programme of study with us. If you have any questions about the nature of the university, then feel free to email me as well about that, and I'm happy to get back to you. Georgina, could you take us on to the next slide? I promise and vow to you right now that I'm only going to dwell on this for a minute or two. It's a subject very close to my heart. Why study history? What is it about history that makes it a unique subject that what is it about history that makes it a unique subject that makes it so worthwhile to study? There's absolutely a school of thought that would say history should be studied for its own sake, that actually knowledge and understanding of the past is worth having in its own right, that there's an element of self-gratification when we know things, and it kind of pleases us to know things. And history is an unfathomably complex and long subject, and there is so much there to learn about and know. And actually knowing those things and understanding those things is something that can fill us with a sense of wonder, or a sense of truth, and a sense of even kind of spirituality. So I think there's a real case to say that history should be studied for its own right, because it's a wonderful subject and it opens our eyes to who we are as human beings. The Another point that I'd just like to share with you is that history is fundamental in helping us understand our contemporary world and who we are as a species, where we've got to, what our society is like, and helps us to unravel and answer some of the questions and tantalizing challenges that present us, that are presented to us in everyday life, whether they be in politics and there's a particular situation that's going on, we're trying to make sense of this, or whether this is in some aspect of social policy or economics. There are so many aspects to history that by researching and studying the past suddenly become our current and contemporary world suddenly becomes more intelligible to us. We understand it better, more deeper, more clearly, and it's more resonant for us. So I think there are some real important points here, that history is a wonderful subject to study in its own right. It can really fill us with a real sense of personal gratification, but equally history can answer some of those really puzzling questions about the world in which we live. Why are things the way that they are? And sometimes it's only through our historical our interrogation of the historical record and trying to figure things out that we can really make sense of our present world. So I am going to stop there, because there are so many ways that we can take this question and explore this question, but I would turn this over to yourself and think for yourself, why would you want to study history? What is it about history that is going to kind of instill in you either a real love for the subject, or give you some kind of wider and more complex or more nuanced understanding of the world in which we live? What is it about history that's going to do that for you? Marcus Garvey, who's quite a famous historian, if you just skip to the next slide, please, Georgina. Marcus Garvey says this, that a people without knowledge of their past history, origin and culture is like a tree without roots. And the roots are the very foundation of the tree. And so our history is that foundation of who we are and what makes us the kind of the complex people that we are, and what makes our society function the way it does, etc. So I think, you know, it's a wonderful subject in that sense of really kind of grounding us in quite insightful knowledge about our kind of present condition, or the condition of human beings worldwide. So what I'd like to do is, following my little kind of ramble there, which might sound slightly ethereal, I don't know, is just kind of ground things a little bit more, and take you into History at Marjon new for 2021, and what that is going to look like. So Georgina's just going to skip us on to the next slide. Okay, so we have a new history degree. History existed at Marjon some time ago, but has not been a degree there for some years. And so we've looked over the last 1 to 2 years to reintroduce and redevelop this programme. I'm fairly new to the university and have worked closely with the director of the School of Arts and Humanities, Sarah McAdam, who is a very inspirational kind of person. And we've collaborated with a team of academics at the university to put together a totally new and original kind of degree. We're very excited about the nature of this degree and what it will look like. One of the key points to that in terms of how the degree will look is in terms of its approach to understanding history, from both my own perspective as somebody who I did my first undergraduate degree in history many years ago now, and the experience, whilst very enjoyable, also didn't fill me with the kind of complex knowledge of history and complex knowledge of associations between periods in history that I've been able to acquire since that degree. So actually, one of the outstanding kind of points that I want to make about our degree is that we intend to take a really thematic approach to learning about history. So whereas in school, say, for example, you have perhaps, and I'm just going to turn this over to Ryan and Georgina in a minute, for their perception of school history if they have some. Whereas in school, you might well have found or experienced history to be a little bit fragmented. For example, we're studying the Wars of the Roses from the 15th century, and then we're then studying the Midwest and American history in the 19th century and the expansion across the continent. It might have seemed quite fragmented. Our approach to history is that actually we can unite through time and space. So thinking about different periods, different peoples, different cultures, and looking at how these relate to one another in a more thematic and a more holistic sense. So what are the bigger themes that connect these periods and these people? And I think that's really fundamental to our understanding of history, so that we can build up those associations and get to that greater element of truth and understanding. Ryan, Georgina, Ryan, do you want to start us off? History at school, how was that for you?
Yeah, probably looking back, actually, I think you sort of said the word fragmented. I think that probably described it quite well for me. We've sort of got little snippets of little things, and it sort of always seemed to be for me, or the school that I went to, sort of like from one point of view. I never sort of felt like I was getting multiple different races or cultures sort of viewpoints on that, whether that be the World War or wherever it was. Yeah.
Great, thanks. It's really fascinating. Those different perspectives are something that I think should be absolutely central and foregrounded in a history degree, and something we certainly intend to do. So, for instance, when we consider World War II is often, for people studying in England anyway, seen through that kind of Anglo-centric, or Eurocentric or Western world, Occidental-centric perspective. So we don't see the war from the perspective of, let's say, people living in the subcontinent in India, and what the war might have meant for them. And I think that's, or when we think about slavery, for example, as another example, we often look at slavery in terms of the origins of the slave trade and then the abolition of slavery. And there's an element of righteousness about that, which I think is questionable. And so our programme would essentially try to look at those different perspectives and explore those. With slavery, for instance, how was slavery perceived for Black Africans? And I think there's something really important there in trying to shift our mindset away from the white middle class version of history. So we're very much taking a decolonized approach to our history curriculum. Thank you, Ryan. Georgina, how was history for you?
I mean, I quite like history, but it was a lot of different time frames. So yeah, I was more interested in some parts than the others. But apart from, I think you guys pretty much summed it up.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that inevitably with anybody, I think we'll find that there are perhaps particular periods in time that truly fascinate us. Mine are quite diverse. I'll just put these out there. So I do have a fascinating and long-standing interest in World War II, but I'm also really absolutely fascinated by anthropology and early human history from sort of 3 million MYA million years ago up until the emergence of Homo sapiens, and then through to the establishment of agricultural economy, etc., in the kind of the 6th to 5th millennium BC, and then the origin of sort of society and culture up to the dawning of the earliest civilizations, Egypt, Sumer, etc. So my interest in history is quite diverse and eclectic, and I think there's something great about that. And what's really, I think, interesting from a historian's point of view is when you can look at those different periods and you can start to build and forge the relationships that connect between them. What is it about the society, the early sort of societies that originated in the Middle East in the 4th millennium BC that we can still relate to our own society today? For example, what are the differences that emerge there that enable us to question the society in which we live, for example, as well? Great, thank you both. A couple more things to just say about history at Marjon. So one, I'm sure you're aware that Plymouth is steeped in its own sort of wonderful and complex history, as well as the wider local region. And this is something we really want to try to make use of and explore and exploit within the context of the degree. The university is also home to a really rich and interesting archive in its own right. Just a word on archives, and I'll come back to this a little bit later, but we do hope that students will engage fully, and it's embedded within our modules is oh, I've just lost the something on the screen. Georgina, I'm not sure if the PowerPoint is still displaying. Thank you. Right, great. So one of the things that we want to really tap into is the great resources that we have, both within Plymouth and also within the university itself. And actually that process of primary research, that kind of data collection is a really fascinating one. So if you have an opportunity at some point to visit the university, then please do try to seek out some time to go to the archive, where our wonderful archivist will maybe show you some of the fascinating documents from the past. We hope to explore our local region through trips and visits. These will be structured in order to relate closely to the learning content and the learning outcomes from the different modules. The history degree is being developed at a time when there's a lot of a real exciting buzz. There's a lot of noise in the city of Plymouth at the moment around some of the developments, i.e. the Box, which is going to be the new historical history museum in the city. We're looking to forge a close relationship with the arts and heritage sector there, which will enable us to make use of their facilities, but also to make use of their archives. So again, we can actually get deep into the history of the past by exploring that rich primary data source. My belief is that when you do a history degree with us at Marjon, that you'll come through your history degree ultimately with a very broad knowledge of the world. And for me, this is absolutely fundamental in terms of what we want to do with regards to the design of this program. So instead of having a fragmented and disconnected history curriculum where units or modules of learning don't necessarily relate to one another or sequentially follow or build on prior knowledge and capture that in a really kind of robust way, what we want to do is ensure that you come through those 3 years with great and insightful knowledge into different periods and contexts and times and places. That means that you leave your university, you leave university with that rich knowledge of the human past, right up to the present day, right from the word go 3 million years ago. So it's a grand sweep of history. The degree sits within the School of Arts and Humanities. I'm just going to ask in a moment again Ryan and Georgina to say something about the nature of the university and those schools. So just to kind of give you a sense of structure, the university kind of sits at the top. So we've got the university. I shouldn't flash my hands too quickly across this screen. The university sits at the top. Sitting below the university, we have our schools. This is how the university is organised, and then the programmes within the different schools. So there are 4 schools within Marjon University. The School of Arts and Humanities is probably well, I'm perhaps biased, but perhaps our most growing, dynamic and exciting school. Georgina may have something to say about that, I don't know. But really exciting place to study. We have some great programmes. We've got a great journalism programme which has great links with the BBC down in Plymouth, including its own campus on in the city centre. We've got a new English degree, social science degree, a range of so an acting degree and a range of associated programmes to acting. So we've got a really great growing school here. And I wondered if maybe Ryan and Georgina might like to say something about the nature of that school and the feeling of community that exists there within the schools. Georgina, you're not within the School of Arts and Humanities, but I'm sure there's something similar for you.
Yeah, definitely. So I work with, in our little school, I work for a lot of other courses during some modules as we share the modules. So I do get to know a lot of people from my course and other courses, and because we're small courses anyway, it is really, really lovely community, and no matter who you get put with, you will all get along, and yeah, it's really nice sessions.
Great, thank you. Thanks. Ryan, did you want to add something there? As somebody in arts and humanities, you might be able to, I don't know, Ryan, perhaps wax lyrical as an actor about the wonderful and burgeoning arts scene that's beginning to exist at Marjon.
Yeah, it is a very sort of collaborative community that I've found. So I mean, the course sort of structure on some of my modules that I've had, we've mixed with other courses and sort of joint modules, so we've sort of collaborated there. So whereas I do an acting course and there's a course that has some more dancing and stuff involved, we can collaborate with them. So I got to learn new skills. And then also the different years. So like when I had my when everyone went into my dissertation in third year, there was always second years and first years who were willing to help and give us time when we were coming around to doing that, obviously that massive milestone dissertation. So I think it's nice in that sense, because it is very much like everybody sort of has everyone else's back, and like we will put in extra time to help out our other like colleagues and friends. And yeah, it's just really nice and supportive.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much, both. I you know, I'm perhaps slightly biased here, but I do think that the university offers a very supportive kind of network. Great. I'm just going to move on. So a couple of points that I'd like to just touch upon again briefly in the next slide, Georgina, please. And these are things that I've mentioned already, but just to kind of underscore these very briefly for you again. So history at Marjon is not taught or won't be taught in a traditional and linear sense. We're looking to understand history and in its rich complexity by taking a really strongly thematic approach, forging those connections between different periods and also to the present, so that we're making it relevant and contemporary for you, so that as you study history, we begin also to learn about the world in which we exist as well as the world of the past. The programme is designed also to take account of the full picture of human history. Now, you might consider that to be an ambitious objective, and I believe it to be also. We can't possibly hope to understand every aspect or part of history, but there is a narrative, or there are narratives in understanding history, and that kind of deep chronological awareness of how human beings existed in the past, in the prehistory period, through to our early history, through the classical period, through the Middle Ages or Dark Age period, early modern and postmodern, arguably, age that we're existing in now. All of these different ages need to be understood, and my fervent belief is that at school, your or the knowledge that you generally accumulate is quite fragmented and piecemeal, and so we're really trying to hope that you come through with that solid chronological understanding and knowledge. Our third ambition there, you'll see, is for you to become very competent and able archivists in your own right, to really engage fully in archival research, both within the archives at the university, but more extensively on a local and national and international international scale as well, as and when those trips are feasible within particular units. The last point there is quite important to me as well, and I think again one of the distinctive features of this programme and other programmes, so for example our English programme, is that we hope you're able to co-construct the curriculum with us. So what are your interests? What do you want to find out about more? How can we support you with that? So we're not experts in every aspect or period. You may become the experts in particular periods and be teaching us to some extent. And actually your learning will become much deeper and more credible and more effective if you are taking ownership and you're celebrating your own your own sort of interest as well as part of an approach which joins up and looks for those links with the talk content. I'm going to guide you through the modules for the program, but just to remind you that if you have any questions, then please feel free to put those into the chat or to get in touch with us via email. So these are our indicative modules. The orange/yellow ones are our first year modules, blues are for year 2 and greens are for year 3. These are currently subject to change, but as I said, we are mostly through the process of, or we're a great deal of the way through the process of having these as definitive modules now, with a lot of the documentation written as well. So we are very excited about the introduction of the modules and what these look like. So I'm just going to run very quickly. So 2 seconds to midnight is a kind of a metaphorical image that basically tells us how many seconds, if we imagine the world's history as a clock of 24 hours, and how long have human beings actually been around for? It's only 2 seconds of that time. So there's quite an evocative image, I think. This is would be our immersive module at the beginning of year 1 and really sets the context. Where do we come from as human? Where do we come from? What is our ancestry? What is it that makes us unique in this world against, say, in relation to other animals? For example, what has enabled us to develop rich and complex societies? And so this module sets out to tackle some of those questions. The follow-up module, or the 2 modules that run concurrently with that, are ancient, contemporary, and historical theory. So ancient contemporary, again, is steeped in world chronology. So we're looking at the very classical period of ancient civilizations. So Egyptian, Sumer, Babylonian, Greek, Roman, through to the present day, to the contemporary world. And whilst that is a very ambitious proposal, we feel that there is scope to develop a sound chronological understanding of the big moments in world history, whilst picking out particular aspects that really appeal to you. And this is, like I say, is where the co-construction of the curriculum comes in. So it may be that actually, in terms of the ancient civilizations, you're more interested in in some of the African kingdoms, and this would maybe not be an area of my expertise, but potentially something that we can support and facilitate with you to grow your knowledge. Historical theory is crucial to the whole degree. This is our 3rd module in semester A of the first year, and really underpins a lot of your learning. So we look at complex and critical theory that helps us, process our kind of ideas and sets a framework for conceptualizing our ideas and understanding history throughout the program. So a very really important module for us. We have some modules that are distinctly thematic. So if you recall, the thematic approach is one that we want to take throughout the program, but we have chosen as a few modules which are intended to be really focused in on this nature of thematic learning. That in year 1 is innovation, science and technology. In year 2, it is rebellion, revolution and conflict. In year 3, it is religion and thought, and also power and politics. I'll just give you a brief example of one of those, as I'm kind of aware that time is ticking. In history, time is always ticking, right? So if we look at rebellion, revolution and conflict, and consider the nature of revolution and rebellion, let's look on the streets of America today and see what's happening there. Now, in order to understand our contemporary world and the nature of revolt and rebellion and discontent among people, let's go back then to the 19th century and let's consider the revolts and the protests that emerged in the 19th century in Britain related to the Chartist movement that was intent on political representation. Let's fast forward to emancipation in the 20th century, emancipation for women, and then the enfranchisement of the wider population as well. In order to make the connections to the present, we are looking to establish the relationships between these different periods in time and look at the reasons that these events or contexts may have arisen. What was it that fueled protest in 19th century Europe? What is it that's fueling protest in 21st century America today? Or in 21st century Hong Kong, let's say, go back a few months and we are right around the other side of the world where we're dealing with a different sort of rebellion in terms of the power of China versus the isolated city-state of Hong Kong. So this kind of study of history will enable us to really tease out some important problems in our own world. Just moving on quickly, so you'll see two other modules in year one, so narrative and biography and mapping history. So narrative and biography is very much about telling stories and getting a kind of a perspective on history that's real and humble and human. Too much history is big, and it's about big facts, big people, big battles, big sieges, wars, etc. And it's very easy to lose the social and the human angle in terms of history. So what we're intending to do with narrative and biography is really bring that out, really bring out the social aspect. Our mapping history module is a module designed to celebrate our local history, in particular Plymouth, to engage with Plymouth as a location and consider the relevance and importance of location and place. So in terms of the development of a place's history. So there's an element of geopolitics here. What is it about the geography of a region that enables it to become the way it becomes? You'll see in year 2 and year 3, 2 modules. One is working in the past in year 2, and in year 3, one is history in your future. These 2 modules are both placement modules and project modules. So these are designed to give you an opportunity to develop, and I'm just going to turn to our ambassadors again in a moment to see if they can say something about this as well, that kind of real life experience of professional engagement, developing your professional competence and your ability to network, enhance your CV, all of these things. So we really are keen here at Marjon to facilitate your knowledge of the work of world, to engage you fully as possible in work-based experience and placement. And so these modules are designed with that in mind. One, to kind of establish that in year 2, and in year 3 to really promote and engage you so that you are ready, actively ready for that next step, whether that next step be the world of work in a history related field or something in a different field. We anticipate that people studying history would go off in all sorts of directions. So just going to turn to Ryan and Georgina. Georgina, maybe you can start us off with this one in terms of widening your professional knowledge and understanding, and how your degree might help you with that.
Yes, so in my second year, so this year, I've completed placement hours, so I've gone into a youth centre and I've worked there and got lots of experience, but I've also got other volunteer roles through the university that are all giving me experience for my future career roles, and I will continue to do that next year. And in some of our teaching rooms as well, it's very realistic observation rooms, so I can go in and I can complete research, stuff like that, in a real life setting, and yeah, just work with people.
Great, thank you. And I think that's kind of testament to some extent to the bespoke nature of the different programs and the kind of placements that they offer. So the intention of any program is to design and develop placement opportunities and work-based opportunities that are really going to sync with your ambition and support you really effectively. Ryan, do you want to say something from your perspective on that?
Yeah, in my first year on the acting course, we took a Shakespeare play and toured it around the southwest. So that gave me the experience of not only sort of life on the road and how a working actor can tour, but also like building set and taking down set, getting in, getting out times of theatres. And then it sort of just built on from that each year. So in my second year, we started making our own performances where we focus on short performances where we make our own sets and things. And then come dissertation, I created my whole show, wrote it, created my own props and everything. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much, both of you. Just to add something in here then, because as you're aware, the programme is new and developing. And so what we would anticipate in terms of some of the work-based placements would be work opportunities in archives, in curation, in museum settings, in working in heritage, working in education. So these are some of the specific focuses of the history industry, but we're also looking very diversely and with a real open mind about what it is that you are interested in and ambitious to do. Just a couple more things quickly with regards to the modules. So you'll see we also have history as inquiry. History as inquiry lends itself to supporting the honours project in year 3. So history as inquiry explores methodological process within history, so you're able to grapple with quite complex paradigms around methodology for research, which then supports you when you get into that third year and undertake your own independent research. That independent research is obviously supervised and supported by staff. Through the Eyes of Others module is actually a module that we'd be looking to share with our English students. This takes an historicist approach to history, so we're really looking at the historical record through the eyes of others, i.e. through the eyes of writers, playwrights, poets, performers of different sorts, artists. So we're really looking to explore and engage with history through the complexity of literature and art. So again, great opportunity to expand that kind of wider social network at the university. Archives and artifacts is intended to, really equip you with those skills again, so that you are prepared before year 3 to engage with primary research. There will be many different opportunities to grapple with those primary data resources, which really bring history to life. So a lot of school history tends to be looking at secondary resources and sources, which is great and fundamental. But at the same time, there's those primary resources are really magnificent in bringing history to life. Our independent study gives you a chance to ambitiously undertake your own research, again, sort of supported by us, but gives you that taste of what it's like to become the researcher ahead of that third year research project, which, like Ryan said, is a big deal. A subject that's very close to my heart is the environment, and the changing landscapes module in year 3 is designed to really address issues around sustainability and the complex way in which the land usage of the world has changed over time, and the inextricable relationship that human beings have with our environment and our impact and imprint on that. This is obviously very much in vogue. The environmental movement is growing and has been growing significantly in the last few years, I would say. And so again, this is a module which is very, very relevant to the present time. If we want to understand what it is about our current condition that concerns us so much, then actually going back in time and looking at the great extinctions of the past in prehistory, or looking at the enclosure of land in the 13th century and then onwards in England, as common land became used by part of a capitalist economy. These are some of the issues that we'll grapple with in this module. I think that kind of hopefully sums up the modules there in terms of what they roughly look like. There is an example of a module here as well, so if Georgina can just skip onto that, and I'm not going to dwell on this and run through it in detail, but I'm sure if you would like to look at that in your own time and at your own leisure, then it will give you a sense of what that content in that very first module that you would do with us would be. Like I say, this is real passion for mine. So I think 2 Seconds to Midnight is a very exciting module. And if you've wondered about the past, or very curious about the how and why we exist and what it is that makes us the way we are, then this would hopefully be a really great module for you to kick off your learning with us at Marjon. I'm just going to go to the next slide, then, which just invites any questions. So I'm just going to bring Siobhan back in and see, Siobhan, if there are any questions that had come through in the chat.
Hi there, Miles. Hi. Yeah, so there's a couple of questions. One, I think we've just talked about the modules. It's just around kind of whether all the modules are compulsory, whether you kind of pick which modules you want to do, and then kind of once you're in the modules and the kind of the research and the essay questions and that type of thing, is there much flexibility there for people to kind of follow their own interests?
Thanks, Siobhan. Yeah, it's great question, and yes is the answer to that. Absolutely, the fundamental principle for the learning at Marjon is that students take ownership of their learning to the greatest degree that they possibly can, and therefore if there is a particular interest that you have, then we would certainly encourage and support that. Hopefully the talk content will open students' eyes to areas that they didn't even know about. We don't know about something that we don't know about, do we? Obviously. So this would be an absolute yes. We would have the modules, whilst compulsory, would have a lot of inbuilt flexibility. So again, if you were to go back to the module that I just indicated a moment ago, then the 2 Seconds to Midnight module, the work that you undertake might actually focus more on the cognitive revolution, or it might focus more on some of the technological developments of early human species. It's really open, so that you can go with what is really going to be effective in exciting you about your learning, whilst we also make sure that dovetails in with the required learning outcomes for the module.
That's great, thank you, Miles. And the other question here is around kind of future careers and possible study options. So what type of career might this degree prepare you for, or what kind of postgraduate options might students potentially want to go on to? I know obviously as it's a new programme, it's kind of difficult to say what students have gone on to do, but what kind of career options might you see this qualification leading to? Yeah,
thanks. So one of the things that we've been talking about, the director of school and I, is looking to develop a master's program for history as either an MA or an MRes. So that's potentially in the pipeline. So it could be something that students would look at beyond the degree if they were keen to continue academic study. So that's one thing. We hope that over the duration of the program, you develop skills and competency that would enable you to work in the history sector or related sort of arts and heritage sector, if that's something that you're motivated to do. That can, like any other industry, be challenging to get into, but we think that you would be in a good position with the network that you establish through Marjon and some of the experiential placement that you undertake to step forward into roles, potentially junior roles, that would then grow and enable you to flourish and develop over time. Those, I think, like I alluded to before, would be things in museum work, heritage, curation. So we're no doubt aware of the bigger societies, National Trust, for example, and Historic Society, but equally there are lots of other smaller museums, smaller archives, smaller curation projects that need undertaking. There's a real kind of energy behind digital curation now as well. And so again, part of what we'd be looking to do through archives and artifacts in year 2 is enhance students' digital competency, so they're able to curate within a digital archive some really rich and important primary sources. Students may well go on to other careers, so there's no reason why you wouldn't do a degree in history and go into banking or go into education or go into business of some sort as well. History equips you with a critical and analytic mind. It gives you a fine a kind of a finely chiseled sense of what makes good articulate writing and conveying messages in clear and appropriate ways. So we develop a real kind of competency in written English, and also being able to articulate and put across argument and speak with clarity and with conviction. So these are skills that will be nurtured at Marjon in many ways through your courses, whichever course that you take. But certainly within the history degree, we would hope that you come out with great soft skills that lend themselves well to all sorts of disciplines and work environments.
That's great, thank you, Miles. We don't have any more questions on the Q&A here.
Okay.
I don't know if you wanted, is there one more slide, Georgina?
Oh, sorry, there is a further slide.
That's fab, thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Miles, before I wrap up the session?
Just to say, if you're as passionate about history as I am, then please send me an email and let's have a conversation. I'm really keen to kind of talk to people about what they're interested in with regards to history, because the course is, I think, going to be really kind of tailor-made to people's interests and co-constructed, as I've talked about. So please feel free to get in touch anytime.
That's great, thank you. And your email address was on the previous slide, wasn't it? So if anybody who is watching, you can actually just rewind the session and pause it to copy the email address down, then that's absolutely fine. So thank you for attending today. I just wanted to kind of invite you really to some more of our Marjon live talks that we've got coming up. So they're running throughout the summer months at various different times and dates, and we will be duplicating talks. So if you can't make one, you're welcome to join another one. And there are, as you can see, lots of different kind of areas around tours of our campus, virtual tours of the campus. If you've got specific queries around things, sort of around student finance or anything to do with that, you can join the Money Matters, and there will be people there in every session who you'll be able to ask questions on the live event Q&As, and hopefully they can give you some further information as well. If there's any further questions that crop up today that aren't so much around history but kind of more broadly to do with life at Marjon, you're welcome to send those to visit us at marjon.ac.uk, and we'll definitely get those to the right people for you, get all your questions answered, and hopefully sort of give you as much information as we can there as well. So so I want to say thank you very much for coming, and thank you to Ryan and Georgina for your input today. It's been really useful to hear about your experiences of your life at Marjon as second and third years, and thank you very much to Miles. Thank you.